So today, Josiah and I want to talk to you about what it means to be future shapers. I happen to believe that one of the most powerful forces in the universe that's most underutilized, oftentimes not touched, oftentimes not embraced, oftentimes not celebrated, oftentimes not stepped into, is the power and the influence of a father. I believe that fathers, it took us 4 decades of studies and thousands of interviews and research for finally the experts to say, you know what? Fathers play a major role in the destiny of their children. They do shape the future. And so if you're a man here today, and we have fathers at different stages of life. Some of you are fathering really small children right now. Some of you have grown adult children. Some of you are great-great-grandparents. Some of you have children with their own children. Regardless of what stage of life you are in your fatherhood, I want to tell you, it's never too late to acknowledge God has given me influence and I want to use it for good. How about it? If there's a father near you, tell him you have influence. Go ahead, find a father, say you have influence. So, by the way, I want to say that there are some new fathers around here today, and I just ran into Phil Ramos, Phil and Eva right over there. Last Father's Day, Phil was right in the back, and I knew that Phil and Eva had been trying to have some children for a while, and it was 1 year ago Father's Day. I saw him in the back, and I went up to him and said, hey, Phil, I'm giving you a happy Father's Day in faith because I believe you're going to be a father soon. It was about a week later they found out they were pregnant, and about 3 months ago they had their baby right there. New fathers. Yeah, celebrating that. Some fathers crumble under fatherhood. Some fathers run from fatherhood. But then there's some that stand up under the pressure and the weight of fatherhood, and they step into this risky, difficult, challenging calling that we call fatherhood. And they seek to shape the destiny and the future of the children that God has put in their life. I want to talk to you about shaping your future. I remember when Josiah was probably he must have been about 6 years old or so, maybe even a little bit younger. He had been disciplined for doing something wrong, and he was not too happy about it, and he had gone to bed crying. And so I waited a little bit, and before I went into his room to pray for him at night, I walked in, and he was just laying there kind of whimpering a little bit. And I knelt down, and I said, Josiah, I said, I'm not sure why you disobeyed, son. You knew exactly what I told you to do, and you disobeyed. So these are the consequences of disobedience. Why did you disobey me, son? And he went like this, and he said, well, Dad, I think I would have obeyed if you would have trained me better. Like, hold on a second. Wait, are you 6 and you're already pushing it on me? Wow. Kids are smart in their approach to things. So I want to take you to one verse in the Bible, just one. We're going to reference other verses, but this is one of the most powerful verses in the Bible on parenting, and it's in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. Proverbs was written by Solomon, who was one of the wisest men on earth, and this is one of the Proverbs that is often quoted in parenting, and I'm going to read it to you. Proverbs 22, verse 6 says this: train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Let me say that again. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. This is a powerful promise, exhortation, principle that tells us if we impart into our children at the right season, at the right time, even when they grow older, they will be drawn back to the ways that they were taught in the beginning. It doesn't mean that your children won't struggle. It doesn't mean they may not go through hard times. It doesn't mean that they may not lose their faith on the journey. It doesn't mean that they may not become prodigals at one time or another, but it tells us that if we train them at the right season, that there is a pull in their life to come back to the way that we've trained them, even as they grow into maturity. And so as we look at this, just this one verse, the word train here is the key verb in this verse. And train, as we broke it into this was originally written in the Hebrew, and the Hebrew word for train is the word hanak. It's spelled chanak, but it's pronounced hanak. So I'm going to teach you a little Hebrew today. The word train is the word hanak. Can you say that? Say it with me. Hanak. You're not saying the k, hanak. Now you're spitting at me. But something like that. And it has four primary meanings to it. It has the meaning of dedicating. It has the meaning of discipline. It has the meaning of instruct. And it has the meaning of initiate. Four different meanings packed in one word. And I believe this is the key to raising our children. So I'm going to start with principle number one. The first word for train is the word dedicate. Write it down. Write the word dedicate down. I believe that the first thing that a father needs to do with a child is to dedicate them. Now, the word dedicate means to consecrate them to a higher purpose. It means that when a child is born, we understand that their life doesn't just belong to them, but they are called to a higher purpose than them. In the Old Testament, for example, when the temple of the Lord was built in 1 King and then also in Chronicles, it says that it's used this as same word in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 5. It said, and the king and all the people hanaked the temple of God, dedicated the temple of God. In other words, when they built the building, they said, this building now will be a place where God will be worshiped, where his glory will come. This building is now a sacred building. We moved into this factory about 13 years ago. It was just a factory, a dental factory. But when we moved into this building, we had a dedication service, and we said that this is a common, normal factory that people walk by. Nothing really sacred has happened in these walls, but now we are dedicating this building to God, and we believe that in the future, this building will be a place where many people will come to God, many people will be baptized, many people will be married, many people will experience the powerful presence of God. In other words, we dedicated the building to a higher purpose. Can I tell you something, parents, especially dads? Dads, I believe it's your responsibility, your job, your privilege to speak into the higher call of your sons and daughters. I believe that you have the ability to take that baby that's born into your household and say, this baby, I'm dedicating to a higher purpose. I'm dedicating this child to God and believing that they're going to fulfill their call, believing that they have a purpose and a destiny and a call in their life that God will use. You speak into their identity. It tells us in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Dads, I want to tell you that I believe that your sons and daughters, they gain their identity from you. They gain their nurturing often from their mother, but they gain their identity from their father. I believe our first and primary responsibility is to speak into the life and destiny of our children and let them know that they have a purpose and a call in their life that's bigger. I remember when my children were small, and when Grant, he's in the house too, right there, also with a suit on. Come on, Grant. That's my 19-year-old son, Grant. When Grant was small, I remember he would do something wrong. He would disobey. He would, misbehave. And I would sit down at eye level, a 5-year-old, I'd look into his eyes and say, Grant, you're a Job, Jobe. That's your last name. We don't lie. We don't behave like that because you're a Job man. What are you, Grant? You'd say, a Job. Okay, that's how you talked when you're little. Do Jobs behave like that? No. I would say, you're a man of God in the making. You have a purpose and a call. You're not like everybody else. Well, everybody else, no, I don't care what everybody else does. You're not everybody else. You're a Job and you have a purpose and a call. You're a man of God in the making. I want you to remember that. What are you, Grant? A man of God in the making. Yeah, that's what you are. You're a man of God in the making. Do you see what happens there? I've just told my son that he's set aside. There's a purpose and a call. Identity dictates behavior. If I think I'm nobody, I act like nobody. If I don't know who I am, I let my peers define who I am. If I understand my worth and understand my value, then I start living out my worth and living out my value. Dads, can I tell you something? There is no one on earth that can speak into the destiny and identity of your sons and daughters like a father can do. The power of life and death is in the Son. Yeah, let's give it up for the fathers that do that. Let's give it up for the fathers that have spoken into their children's lives, spoken into their destinies. Praise God for that. You have a great power to do so. The second part of this, train, means
discipline, which Grant got really good at. Nobody likes discipline. Parents don't like to give discipline. Kids don't like to get disciplined. I got disciplined a lot growing up for a lot of different things.
He deserved it.
Debatable. One of the times I got disciplined, I knew that, if you want me to be honest, right, we put my cards on the table, I knew that mom didn't spank as hard as dad. So, if I did something while dad was out of the house and I got in trouble, I knew that, if mom spanks, kind of fake it, ow, it really hurt. Oh. But I knew that if dad was home or if mom communicated to dad while he was away, I'm not going to spank you, but wait till your dad gets home. I knew that was bad. But if you get disciplined a lot, you get creative. So one time he was coming and I got disciplined for probably being disrespectful or saying something wrong. And my mom said, wait till dad gets home. And I waited. He got home. I hear the door open downstairs. And I think, okay, I need to prepare myself. So I went into my room. I got some of the thickest winter socks I could find. And I started stocking up. And I knew how it goes. He came up the stairs. Josiah, you know what you did? Yeah, I felt like I was walking to my death sentence over here. I go to the room and I have to bend over, arms by the side. If you put your arm, you get hit again. So real strict, arms by the side. And right before he kind of pulls the bell, it's like the tension's building up and he's going. And right before he kind of stops. And he's kind of looking at me. And I'm skinny, man. And he looks and he's like, you been squatting or like what? Like, what is all this? I know that doesn't run in the family. What's going on here? I still got spanked. I think I got an extra spank. Hey, discipline's not fun. The parents don't enjoy disciplining. The kids don't enjoy being disciplined. Yet listen to what Ephesians 6:4 says. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. See, discipline is essential to your child growing. One of the aspects of discipline is helping your child understand the difference between right and wrong. Now, it's not just saying, hey, what does the world think is right and wrong? No, what does Ephesians 6 say? It says, train them, discipline, and instruct them in the Lord. So it's what's right and wrong in the Lord's eyes, not necessarily our eyes. The second piece of that, which is even more important than your child understanding that's right and that's wrong, more important than that is your child understanding and now choosing to do what's right over what's wrong. See, that's the power of disciplining. Discipline, although a thing that we don't enjoy doing, there's a lot of things that we don't enjoy doing that are still worth doing. Many people see discipline as merely a form of punishment. My child broke this, my child did this, my child said this, so I'm going to use punishment. But it's much more than that. Discipline is actually an act of love. So out of the three of the kids, I'm pretty sure I was the most loved because I got the discipline the most, I think that's what that means. Proverbs 3:12 says, listen, because the Lord disciplines those that he loves. See, think about this for a moment. In this room, we got a lot of great dads, we got a lot of good dads, but there is no perfect dad in this room. God himself is a perfect dad. And yet God, being completely and totally perfect, chooses to use discipline as a tool in his children's lives. A perfect dad. You say, well, why does he do that? Why does God use discipline if this is a form of love? Well, Hebrews 12 gives us the answer. Can I give one more side note there? Growing up when we would get disciplined, or we were going to get spanked or get in trouble, or there was a moment where he'd kind of instruct and teach in that moment before he's gonna, spank you. And a lot of times he'd say, turn around and look at me before I spank you. I go, okay. And he'd turn around and say, Josiah, you know why I'm doing this? I'm like, yeah, because, I broke this or I did this. He goes, no, I'm doing this because I love you. Can I tell you that doesn't translate really well to a child when you're about to spank them? In the moment, that doesn't really come across real clear. I was always like, if you love me, then you wouldn't discipline me. But listen to what Hebrews has to say. This is what God has to say the purpose of discipline in our life is. Hebrews 12, 10 and 11 says, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. Holiness means to be set apart, to be like God. No discipline seems pleasant at the time. And no kid gets spanked and was like, wow, thank you, that felt great. I'm gonna have a better day now. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Listen to the last verse. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. See, there's a purpose, there's a reason for discipline. God disciplines us as the perfect father disciplining his children. God disciplines us sometimes because we choose to live in a way of sin. And so God says, hey, I want you to change from the way that you're living, the wrong way that you're living, and I want you to live in a way that's righteous. I want you to live in a way that's right. I want you to live, if you're living in conflict, I want you to live with a life of peace, but you're going to keep going down that road. So I'm going to bring some pain into your life to help you turn around so that you could be on the right track. Us parents, we do the same thing. What's the opposite of righteousness and peace? The opposite of righteousness and peace is wickedness and restlessness. No parent wants their kid to be wicked and restless. Pain is a teacher. A little bit of pain experienced now so that they don't experience a greater pain later in their life. You say, well, what's the greater pain? What if I choose not to discipline my kids? Or, the greater pain is them living a life that's not righteous, living a life that they don't understand the difference of right and wrong, living a life where they don't know what the Lord's will is for their life. They don't know what the Lord's instruction is. They don't choose right. And so they end up destroying their life and ruining it and experiencing so much more pain later in their life because sometimes we hold back discipline younger in their life. A little bit of pain now to avoid a greater pain later. I hated, some of you are with me, I hated getting shots when I was younger. But I had a terrible experience because I was allergic to peanuts where they had to test me. So I got like 7, 8 shots in one time and it just scarred me. I was like, I don't ever want to get shots again. And so when I had to go to Africa, when I was 16, when I had to go to Africa, they have to give you a ton of different shots. And I just did not want these shots. They're like, no, we can give them. I'm like, no, I've experienced this. This is painful. I don't want this. I'm okay. I'll risk my chances. But they said, well, you know what malaria means. You know what typhoid means. If you don't get these shots, the pain down the road, the throwing up, the sickness, even possibly death will be far worse than a little prick to your skin right now. So I chose to have experienced a little bit of pain that would avoid the greater pain down the road. Someone who never learns to choose the difference between right and wrong will end up ruining their life. Discipline is painful, but is in the best interest of your child or your children in their long-term future.
Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Train means to dedicate. Train means to discipline. And thirdly, train means to instruct. I want to say this when it comes to instruct. There are some of you fathers here that say, Pastor, you don't know the house that I grew up in. I never had a father that said, I love you. Or I never had a father that was home. Or I saw my father treat my mother very poorly. Or maybe your father walked out on you when you were 5 years old. Or maybe he was abusive. Or maybe he wasn't the best example. Or maybe he was an alcoholic. And so you say, Pastor, I don't know how to become I don't know how to be the father that my kids need and want. And I want to tell you this. If you're feeling that way, or if you felt that way, I want to tell you that you are an instructor to your kids. And you don't have to be an expert, but what you do have to choose to be is an involved father. They've done study after study, and they realize that fathers that are positively engaged in their children's life help prevent kids that have fathers that are involved in their life have less chance of teenage pregnancy, much less chance of addiction in their life later, much less chance of depression or suicide in their life, much less chance of failing out of school, much higher chance of finishing college, much higher chance of being able to graduate from school, much higher chance of having good relationships later on in their life, much better at socializing with other people, much better chance at taking risk. Why? Not because they had perfect fathers, but because simply they had a father that said, I will be involved in your life. So if you're here today and you say, Pastor, I don't know really how to instruct my kids, I want to challenge you. You start by being involved in their lives. Be involved in their lives. Determine, I will not be an absent father. I will be engaged in their lives. I will choose to somehow have an influence in my children's lives so that they know I'm a part of shaping their life and destiny. And I want to tell you something. I realize that we have some single mothers here. And you know what? You have a challenging task. God bless you. I pray all the time that God would give single mothers a double portion of blessing to be able to raise their children. Let's get up for single mothers and the challenge that they have. But I want to tell you something. If you're a single mother right now, I would encourage you to make sure that your sons or daughters get around a grandfather, an uncle, other positive male role models in their life, because you can do so much, but you can't teach your son to be a man unless he's around a man. And you can't really teach your daughter to be valued by a man unless she has positive role models. So even though you may not have a present father there, you need to get your kids around some positive role models so that they can experience what a good man looks like and what an invested man looks like, because they're wired different. For example, with my mothers tend to be nurturers. They want security. They tend to make sure that things are safe. And fathers oftentimes are the ones pushing for independence, for risk, for challenge. I saw it in our household. I remember, for example, when my son Grant, I remember he was at a river about to jump off of a river on a rock, about to jump into a river. And my wife would say, no, he shouldn't do that. Grant, what are you doing? Get down, get down. It may be too shallow. He may get hurt. Get away from the edge. That's what she would tell him. I would say, hey, Grant, go to the higher rock. I think you can make a bigger splash. How about doing a flip when you jump in, Grant? I think that would really be cool. So it's the difference between a father and a mother. When my children were smaller and go to a swing, my wife would say, hang on with both hands, don't go too high. And I would say, hey, when you get really high, let's see if you can jump off and see how far you can go. Both are necessary. One is nurturing and the other is risk-taking. And I want to tell you, fathers, that the influence that you have in your sons and daughters is vital because you are instructing them on how to live their life by how you live your life and what you value. Notice what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 6. It says, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments I give you today to be on your heart. Impress them on your children. Can I tell you something, dads? You are responsible for the spiritual instruction of your children. You may be new at this. If you're a first-generation believer, no one ever read the Bible to you, you never knew how to pray, you never went to church, you don't know what Deuteronomy is, and you're just new to this, I want to tell you, praise God for that. You're a cycle breaker, legacy maker. You're the first generation to impart into your children. God bless you. He's going to give you a double portion to be able to do that. And some of you fathers here are cycle breakers, legacy makers. You're the first generation to do that. But I want to tell you something. Even though you may feel uncomfortable doing this, can I tell you, be the spiritual leader of your household? That means that when you sit down and have dinner with your children, how about if you're the one that says, I'm going to pray over this meal? You say, well, Pastor, I don't really know how to pray. Learn. Your boys need to see and your daughters need to see you taking spiritual initiative and say, we're going to pray over this meal. Learn to bless your children before they go to bed at night and lay hands on them and be able to pray blessing over them. Learn to lead your family to the house of God, to the church of God, so that they know my dad expects us to be in the house of God, expects us to be worshipers. Learn to get into the Word of God yourself so that your children see you worshiping God and see you also reading the Word of God. Learn to treat your wife the way that she needs to be treated, because you're training your boys how they should treat a woman, and you're training your daughter on how she should expect to be treated like as a man. That is your responsibility, men of God, to instruct them in the ways of God so that you are teaching them this is how you are to behave. I believe that part of our responsibility is to speak in the destiny of our children. We are telling them who they are and who we expect them to become. Let me close this point with this. I read you the verse before. Proverbs 18:21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. I want to close this point with this. I want to remind you that you have the power to speak in the destiny of your sons and daughters. Do that often. You're instructing them. You're speaking in faith into their future. You're saying, this is who I believe you are. This is who I believe you're becoming. Even before they are it, speak it into them. So many of us as parents, we have the tendency to say, you're not going to announce it. We try to scare them into good behavior. You're going to fail school. You're going to end up in jail. You're not going to amount to anything. You're going to become a drug addict. You're going to be living in the streets. No one's ever going to like you. You'll never know how to do that. We're trying to negatively reinforce behavior into their life. But what we don't understand that we're doing when we speak that way into their life, what we are is we're shaping the image that they have of their future. You are prophetically speaking into their future. You're telling them you're going to end up in jail. And in their mind, some of them think when they're young, I'm going to end up in jail. That's who I am. You're never going to have a job. And when they're old enough to apply for a job, they think I can never get a job. I was told all my life I'm never going to get a job. You're going to be just like your father who abandoned us at 5 years old. And in their mind, they think I should never get married and I can have kids, but I'll probably walk away just like my father because you are instructing them in a way of life. You haven't learned the power of a blessing. A blessing is we speak into their future before it's them. A blessing is we see their calling and their gifting and their unique talents and we call it out in them. We speak it over their lives even before it's real, even when they're young, we start seeing who they can become and we speak it out into their lives so that when they face the world, they already have an image of who they are and who they will become for God's glory and make a difference in this world. And before we move on to our next point, which will be our final point, before we move on to our next point with Josiah, this is a spontaneous thing. I hadn't planned on doing this, but I'm going to do that in this service. I'm going to ask my 19-year-old son, Grant, to come. Come on. Come here. Come on, let's give it up for Grant Job. Grant's the youngest of the family, 19 years old. Came back from a missions trip, YWAM. He was in Australia, Africa, Nepal, digging the foundation for homes of widows whose houses had been lost in earthquake. And so, but he's the youngest of the family. But fathers, if you're a little bit confused about how to do this, I'm going to do this in front of you with Grant. Can I do it? The power of a blessing. Grant, I've known you since you were just a little baby. We prayed over you. The doctors thought something maybe would be wrong at your birth. They were sort of right, sort of wrong. Nah, just kidding. When you were born, I knew before you were born that you would be strong. I had a word that you would be like a Samson, but would need to channel your energy. Before you were born, I already knew that you would be strong, and you have been a football player, a leader. I saw it in you. I knew it before. We prayed over it. Grant, you've always been inquisitive. You have a sharp mind, very sharp mind. You read books that I can't even read. And you want to know about politics and economics and how the world functions. I believe that God is going to use that sharp, inquisitive mind for His glory. You've been a leader. You went through high school and did not allow peer pressure to draw you down. I've seen people around you look up to you. You've influenced people around you because you have a leader inside of you. I believe you have a call and a purpose. I see it inside of you. I see a gift of compassion inside of you. When you see people hurting, it really touches you deeply. You try to act like it doesn't, but deep inside, I see it. A super strong heart of compassion inside. You want to make this world a better place. You hate injustice. You want justice to prevail. You want systems to change. I see the heart of a man of God inside of you. And I'm super, super proud of who you're going to become and what God is going to do in your life, Grant. I'm excited to see your future, Grant. I love you, son. Can I tell you, dads, I don't care how old your son or daughter is, you need to be speaking into their destiny in life. You need to be calling out what you see. Even when they're at the bottom of the barrel. When you look at them and say they need to change, if all they hear from you is what's going wrong, what they're not doing, but you haven't spoken to what you see in them, you haven't instructed them into this is your call, this is your purpose, this is what I see in you. There's no one, you say, well, their teacher does it. Their teacher cannot speak into them like you can. You see, their mother does it. Yeah, the mother's important, but she can't speak like you can. Their coach does it. Yeah, the coach is important. Can I tell you, Dad, there's no one that can speak into the destiny of your children's life like the words of a father speak into the destiny and future of your children's life. Speak it. Speak it freely. Speak it often. Speak it powerfully. That's our calling.
Fourth and last. The last meaning of the word train is to initiate. Now, behind this word, really the idea behind it is the palate of the mouth. And if you look at how it was used in the Hebrew, it's typically how it was used. It was used to explain the situation where a maidservant or a midwife would rub the palate or the tongue of the newborn with a little bit of olive oil in order to create a taste or a hunger in the child and to get the baby to suckle. See, I need to initiate the taste to create an appetite that produces an action. See, children, regardless of what age they are, be it 5 or 30, need to taste the goodness of God. Listen to what Psalms 34:8 says. Taste and see that the Lord is good. You know, we have people every once in a while, they come in and they want to see what the church is doing and how they're doing it and how the church is multiplying across the nations and how the church is multiplying to 25 locations in the city. We had a team come in from Canada not too long ago, and they were asking us, what's the best food? What's the best pizza? We know Chicago's known for the pizza. You know, where should we go? What I didn't do is I didn't take out a picture of Giordano's and say, hey, see this cheese? Extra thick. And the sauce on it is just the right temperature. And the crust, it's really, really thick, but it's not too crunchy. I mean, you could really see from the picture, doesn't it look good? Hey, all I would accomplish is to get them really hungry, like I'm probably getting you really hungry. But there's something different about just seeing something on a picture, just observing something and being able to taste it. There's something different there. See, what God has called you to do is not make him look more appealing. What God has called you to do is to lead your children in an experience so that they can taste God and see that he's good. See, you need to experience God to be able to realize his goodness. You can't just say, well, I can see my parents' relationship with God. I can see it from afar. No. A child needs to experience God for themselves.
Good. That's good.
Your job as the parent, regardless of what age you are and what age your child is to give your child a chance to taste and see that the Lord is good. Bring them to a Christian concert with you. Bring them to church. Invite them to your small group that you attend. Go to dinner with another Christian family with them. Take them to an outreach. Serve with a homeless ministry here. Take them to a worship night or an encounter retreat. Bring them on a mission trip with you and see if they can taste the goodness of God. I came to Christ when I was really young. I walked, I grew in the Lord, but I needed a fresh encounter. When I was 16 years old, I went on a mission trip to Africa. Now, we did a lot of great serving. I experienced a lot of good, but there was something that transformed me on the trip more than anything else. It was experiencing God in a way that I had never experienced God before. I experienced the goodness of God, the faithfulness of God, the love of God, the joy of God, the peace of God. I got to experience God on a whole nother level, and I encountered him, and guess what? That solidifies the faith in your child when they experience God and have their own relationship with God. See, because no person, there is no grandchildren. God has no grandchildren. He has sons and daughters. And so every child needs to establish their own relationship with God. See, if they never have an experience or a chance to taste the goodness of God, they will never have an appetite for them, and their actions, their life will never change. Listen to what Matthew 5:16 says. Because it's not just about an environment, it's about the way you live. Matthew 5:16 says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to the Father who is in heaven. See, when you allow, I don't care if you came to Christ when you're 50 years old or 20 or 15. When you come to Christ and you bow your knee, and the Bible's terminology is you were born again. See, when you're born again, you are filled with the Spirit of God. So God comes inside of you. He doesn't just change your outside actions. He changes your mind and your heart, the core essence of who you are. And once God changes the core essence of who you are, your actions change. See, when you have somebody that's around, when you have a genuine, real, on fire Christian around you, guess what? They make a dent. They make an impact. They have a ripple in the people around them. There is such a power in really living out and allowing the Spirit of God to lead your life. Because the people that are close to you, especially your children, man, they could smell phony. But if you're really walking with God and allowing Him to take over your life, guess what? The love of God, they experience through you. Because when you start to walk with God, just like Galatians chapter 5 says, you're filled with the fruit of God. And the fruit of God is love, patience, joy, peace, kindness, goodness. So that who God is at the core essence, they experience that through you. God has called you. God has called you to initiate the appetite for God in your children. He's called you. It's one of your tasks as a parent. There's going to be a lot of things that they grow to have an appetite, a lot of things that they're going to have a taste for, but it's your job as a parent, as their guardian, as their mentor and coach. It's your job, especially as fathers, it's your job to help to give your child a chance to encounter the living God that sent His Son to die on the cross for them. Has your child experienced the goodness of God? Have you given your child a chance to experience God? You say, well, they're not that into it right now. They have their own thing. What I've realized is that if God has truly taken over your life, and you're truly walking with God, people will start to look at your life and say, how can I get some of that peace? Like, this is my life right now. But how can I get some of that peace in my life because I don't have that? Grandparents, speaking to your children and your grandchildren's life, they're going through a season. They feel like they're hopeless and broken. Speak hope. Show them that, man, you're an example to them. They say, well, why do you have so much joy after this passed away? Why do you have so much joy? And you say, well, let me tell you, it's the goodness of God. See, you and I are arrows, not pointing to ourselves, but pointing to a power, a goodness, a faithfulness, a love, a joy, a peace that is so much greater than us and sustains us. Let them taste the goodness of God.
Praise God. Train up a child in the way he should go. Training means to dedicate. Training means to discipline. Training means to instruct, and training means to initiate. We're going to close this service by praying for every father that's in this auditorium. I believe, dads, that today's message is not to discourage you about what a good or not so good father you have been. Today's message is to give you faith that regardless of your past, this is a new day to start fresh. This message is today to speak into your lives and say, do not underestimate the power that you have to shape the identity and the future of your sons or daughters even today. Whether they are young or whether they are old, you have the power to help shape their identity. So I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. I don't want you to buy into the lies that I have no influence. You have greater influence than what you know you have. And so I want you to step up and be future shapers.